Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for jumping on here. Let's go ahead and get started today. So just cover a couple things. A little bit shorter of a meeting than what we had on Monday, and we'll get to it. I hope you guys are all doing well, and I just kind of wanted to provide you with one or two more tools here for you guys, just in general, and also during this time to kind of maintain your sanity a little bit and increase your mental skills. So just had that little picture up there just to hold on. Just, you know, I don't know if it sounds hokey or not, but I do think, like we talked about on Monday, that we have a lot more power of choice than a lot of times we remind ourselves that we do. And so just remembering we have the power to choose a lot of times how we feel, how we think about things, how we treat people, all those things are super important. And I want you guys to be mindful of that as you kind of go through every day. And when we get back to volleyball, when we get and with school, and you can apply these things across every aspect of your life. So what I want to cover tonight a little bit has a little bit of a parlay from what we were working on Monday in terms of kind of choosing how you feel about things, or the language that you use with yourself. I know we went pretty in depth with that, but we're kind of going to focus today on something a little bit different. So let me just switch this. And oh, hold on, I didn't share the right thing. Dang it. Sam, do you see a picture of a pink elephant, or you still see the girl?
Pink elephant.
Pink elephant? Okay, perfect. All right, so let's just read this together. I took this off of a website, so, but it applies. That a lot of times as coaches, our athletes talk to us about what they want to stop doing or what they don't want to do. And sometimes even as coaches, we fall into the habit of talking about what we don't want you to do and what we, but kind of the way that we talked about language on Monday about wanting to have more forward thinking positive words that are in our lives versus backwards thinking negative words. So too, we want to focus on not stopping what we don't want to do, but talking about, thinking about, moving forward with things that we do want to do. And some of you guys may have heard of the pink elephant thing before, but if you haven't, this is just kind of like a famous metaphor for this, which is if someone tells you don't think about a pink elephant, the first thing that you're going to do is think about a pink elephant. And that's where your brain's going to go. And the reason why it's so important to think about those things is as it relates to the mental pictures that you want to paint for your productivity or your success, or what you want to get done on any particular day, or how you want to be successful with any particular task. If you think about what you don't want to do, then all you're really focused on are those things, and it's just such a bigger hindrance than trying to move forward. And we get stuck a lot of times in those situations. And I think part of it is that we can be in the middle of something and still be retrospective about what we're doing in the middle of doing it. So we think about outcomes, right? And that happens to us all the time in all kinds of facets. So really, when you're thinking about the outcome of something, you're jumping too far into the future, because remember, understanding comes after the fact, okay? So we're always looking in the rear view when we're trying to understand something, but when we're in the middle of it, we're always trying to look forward. So if you're thinking about what you don't want to do, you're usually trying to do it for a particular outcome, which means that you're jumping into a thought process that needs to happen after everything's already all said and done. And you can go back and kind of explore why things went the way that they did, but it doesn't help you in the moment to get the best out of yourself in that particular situation. Hope that makes sense to you guys. So I don't know how that relates to you guys, as it stands today, or with whatever you're going through, but it kind of spiders out and has all these connections everywhere where we talk about choosing what we want. Well, if you're always geared towards outcome, or you're always trying to um, control outcomes, then you're going to always be looking in the rear view, and it's really, really hard to not be negative in that moment, in the middle of it. And if you're looking forward, you're using those positive words, you're trying to remain in a positive state, looking forward, not so much worried about the outcome, but more worried about the process of whatever it is that you're going through, then it just sets you up so much better for success. You can't guarantee that everything's going to work out all right, but we're talking about just upping our chances for success, and having ultimately just a good mental state and a good mind frame for whatever it is that we're doing.
I'll maybe agree with this, Chris, but could you potentially consider, like, the pink elephant could also be like not a pink elephant, but the future thing that you want, like your goal. Like, if you choose to think of the pink elephant, but the pink elephant is your goal in the future, then you're thinking of the right thing, I guess it would be like,
yeah, that's it. No, you're right on. That's exactly what I'm comparing it to, because I'm saying that as soon as I'm glad you asked, because that way it's clarification for everybody. The pink elephant often is the outcome. That's why when it's game point and you're thinking about winning the game, instead of thinking about whatever task might come up, or whatever read you need to make, or whatever transition you need to do, or whatever you need to do to prepare to set the best set or pass to the best of your ability, if you're focused on the outcome of winning game point, then your energy is in the future instead of in the present, and it doesn't work. It doesn't match up. It doesn't sync that way. And so that's often why, as cliche as it is to talk about staying in the moment, how important of a skill that is, and how staying in the moment will be a phrase that will never cease to exist, I don't think, when athletes talk about how to get the best out of themselves in pressure situations, or in moments that they deem to be important in whatever they're doing. So absolutely. The other thing that, okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay, give me just 1 second to pull these other things up for myself, my notes.
Hey, Joe, what's up, dog?
Good one, Sam. Nothing. What's up with you?
I don't have anything for it. Just yes, coach.
Hey, Joe Sue, is the pink elephant the water hazard on the left?
Can't hear him. Absolutely. I have a good story about that. I'll try to make it short, but one of the times I've laughed the hardest in my life, I was playing golf a long time ago in Arizona before the end of the year festival. And I'm playing golf with two guys, and one of my friends is playing really, really well. And all of a sudden we're on a hole, and there is a lake, and it is so far out of the way. It is like 200 yards to the left of the fairway. And right before he addresses the ball, I said, "Hey, don't forget about that lake that's over there." And sure enough, he whacks it straight into that lake. And it was like, it almost had to go 90 degrees to get to the water. And he was so mad. And I still laugh about it to this day, because I was on the ground just hysterically laughing when he did that. It was the most ridiculous thing, but it's a great example of that. So the other thing I just want to talk with you guys about real quick, and I'll get a little bit of feedback from you guys on this. So I'm first just going to kind of introduce it, and then I'm going to call on somebody to give me kind of what they think about it. So what I wanted to talk about today as it relates to, I think, things that we're going through now is kind of this all or nothing thinking that sometimes we can have in our lives and in our games. And it relates a little bit to the back to the pink elephant again, but basically all or nothing thinking is all you can see in that moment is the black and white of those outcomes. And usually it's, you've got the super negative outcome and the super positive outcome. So like the worst case scenario and the best case scenario. And all that's in your mind are those two scenarios, and you're emotionally attached to them, negatively to the worst case scenario, and obviously positively to the best case scenario. But ultimately, when all said and done, we know that almost all of life, the scenarios are somewhere in the middle. Almost way more often than not, the most best thing that could possibly have happened to you in the situation doesn't happen, and neither does the absolute worst thing that could have ever happened to you happen in that situation, and trying to get out of that a little bit. So all or nothing thinking is seeing things in black and white categories. If the outcome falls short of perfect, then you see total failure, and it just creates struggles. So let me see, let me get to gallery view here. Jill, unmute yourself.
Okay.
Hey, Addie, out. Sorry, I didn't realize my dog got into my bedroom. So all or nothing thinking, Jill, can you think of something in your life that you can kind of relate to? It could be volleyball, or it could be just something else that you're going through where you struggle with kind of thinking that if it doesn't work out exactly the way you want it, then it feels like failure.
I guess when I'm like for school, I always want to be like have everything like perfect, and if I do it and I think like one thing is wrong, and then I turn it in and I miss something, I feel like I totally messed up or something like that.
Yeah, like you just respond to it like it's the worst thing that ever happened to anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Malia?
Maybe like when I'm cooking something and then it's not exactly what I wanted it to taste like, then I'm kind of disappointed and I get like mad at myself, but it's still like okay.
I totally relate to that one. I do that all the time. I cook meal, or not all the time, but a lot of times I cook meals for the family and it doesn't come out exactly the way I want it to. And it doesn't matter how much Kristen and the kids tell me how great it is. I just like can't be satisfied because it didn't turn out exactly the way I wanted to. Yeah. And I try to tell myself, like, if everyone loves it and is saying how great it is, then what are you beating yourself up about? So that kind of leads into all or nothing thinking is really a distortion of the way that your brain works. So technically we call it a cognitive distortion. So cognitive distortions are habitual ways that we think. So ways that we think all the time, or patterns of thinking that we get into, where we twist the experience, we twist the moment, and we essentially make things to be true that aren't really true, but in our minds they're true. And so we experience them as true. We have emotional reactions to them that like they're true. We're stressed out like they're true, but really in the grand scheme of things, they're not. Like Malia, if your enchiladas didn't turn out exactly the way you wanted them, they're probably still really good, but your experience is not that the enchiladas are good. Your experience is that the enchiladas are bad. So the thing that's really devastating about them is just that they're super rigid and they're irrational, but nevertheless, they're true to you and you experience them as true. And so we just want a couple like tips to kind of call ourselves out when we're thinking like this and give ourselves a little bit more freedom from the all or nothing thinking. One thing that I think, going back to Monday's lesson about verbiage, I am big on not using the words always and never. And sometimes they do slip out of my mouth, but when I do, I really try hard to go back and say, you know what? No, not always. I may, at the most, a lot of times, like most of the time, is as far as I can get, as close as I can get to always. And some of the time is as close as I can get to never. And if it really, really is an absolute always, and never, as long as I've gone through the process of asking myself, is it really that? But I think that's an easy example because I think that one's pretty prevalent. I think the words always and never are really, really prevalent in the way that we talk. And going back to Monday and going back to thinking about how negative words affect, if you are saying, I always get the short end of the stick, I always shank balls in pressure situations, well, then, yeah, then that's going to be true because it's true for you and it's what you're telling yourself is going to happen, instead of giving yourself an out. You know, because when you look at numbers, you know, the numbers are going to bear out that you don't really do those things all the time, or that really doesn't happen never or none of the time. It's usually somewhere in the middle. I think a really good exercise for this too is when you get into all or nothing thinking, or you're using words like always or never, is just to kind of write things down. When you have negative thoughts about yourself, write that negative thought down on paper. And there's something powerful about looking at on paper and going, you know what, that's actually kind of ridiculous. When I read it on paper, or if you were to read someone else writing it, you wouldn't think that it was necessarily true. But when it's just between your ears, you tend to just give it a lot more weight than it really has. And so watching your verbiage, always and never, everything, nothing, you know, everything's wrong. Well, are you breathing? Okay. Are you alive? So not everything is wrong right off the bat, right? And so just getting those words out and just being conscious of that can help us, especially you know, on the volleyball court in those pressure situations, as we relate this to life, but back to volleyball as well. Those words are going to be super powerful to you when you inevitably get those butterflies or are stressed out in those situations on the court when you want to perform. So what does happen in life, what does happen on the volleyball court most of the time? Some shade of gray, not black and white. It's somewhere in the middle, and we're just trying to steer it to be more on the positive side than on the negative side in terms of, and just consistency over time. It's a lot of the reason I'm not at all of your practices, but I talk to your coaches all the time. And the one thing that we pretty much all agree on is that we're looking at ways to train you, not that work every time, but that work more often than not. So even if we were to give you something that works 6 times out of 10 times and 4 times it doesn't work, right? That there's only a small difference between how many times it works and how many times it doesn't work, but over time those multiples work out. So, you know, we started off with 6 and 4, and then we get to 12 and 8, and then we get to 18 and 12, and then we get to 24 and 16. And as we build out and build out and build out and build out, we start to see that gap really increase. So all we're looking at is kind of like these small little individual gains that end up adding up to things in the end. And that's why these all or nothing thinking and these black and white ways of thinking are detrimental. I feel like I might have said this before, but one of the analogies of this that I use a lot is someone saying that telling themselves in the morning that they're going to go on a run for 20 minutes, and they find themselves not having the time to go on a run for 20 minutes. So they decide not to go on a run. And you come to them and say, well, you have 10 minutes to get a run, and why don't you just go for a 10-minute run and come back real quick? And they go like, oh no, well, if I can't run for 20 minutes, then I'm not going to run at all. Okay. And we all do that all the time. But in reality, running for 10 minutes is way better than running for 0 minutes. So black was run for 20 and white was run for 0. And you were in an all or nothing scenario, and you played it out that way when you could have gone gray in the middle and gotten out of it what you could. And, you know, sometimes you can sneak out and maybe work on your volleyball for just a couple minutes, and you, as it equates to you, you might be looking like, oh, I wanted to go out and work on my setting for a half an hour today, but I don't think I'm actually going to be able to fit that in. Well, then work on your setting for 5 minutes, right? And tomorrow maybe you'll work on it for 7 minutes. Maybe the next day you'll get in 30 minutes. But all those little chunks of time are going to add up, and it's so much easier to develop good habits in little chunks of gray than it is constantly being in situations where it's black and white, because you're going to find yourself shutting yourself down a lot. Okay. So just to get a little bit of feedback from you guys. So let's see, Sydney, unmute yourself.
Hi.
Hi. Do you, can you relate to this at all? Do you find yourself sometimes in having kind of these all or nothing type of ways of thinking about things?
Yeah, sometimes I feel that way where it's like, I'm not trying to decide what I should do if I don't have time to do something. If I want to still do it for like a little bit of time, or if I want to wait. But it's not, I would say it's not good to wait, because it's just doesn't end up getting done, you know?
Yeah, and even making a little dent in it can be better than making zero dent in it. And I think too, ultimately, you'll be way more proud of yourself. At the end of the day, if you do a portion of something that you set out, like this big goal to get this whole thing done, and you do a portion of it, at the end of the day, you'll still be glad you did that portion of it. But if you didn't do any of it, then you're going to beat yourself up at the end of the day. And then you just set yourself up for the negative behavior the next day as well. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is just because right now, with what we're all going through with, hold on one second, with being quarantined, I think that one of the worst things that we can do to ourselves right now is get into this all or nothing type mentality, because I think it's even harder right now to resist going to the nothing part of it. So I would suggest, or I would advise you guys and encourage you every day to get little bits of things done here or there. I know that I know you guys have your schoolwork, and obviously your schoolwork, your teachers have assignments for you, and that's kind of a cut and dry deal. Like, you need to read these pages or do this assignment and whatever that is. So you need to complete those, obviously. But I'm talking about kind of in the other aspects of your life. If you're finding yourself kind of lack of motivation, when you're not really pressed to get anything done, you're kind of wasting the day away and not really doing anything. Find little moments to get just a little bit of something done. Okay, don't try to master chess in one day. Maybe just like learn how to play the game a little bit. Don't try to become the world's best setter in a day. Work on it for 5 minutes. Maybe if you haven't played an instrument for a long time, go pick it up for 5-10 minutes. You never know, go tinker on the piano. And I think if we get overwhelmed by kind of all the things that we're missing out on doing and can't do, then at least my reaction tends to be like, well, if I can't do all these things, then I might as well not do anything at all. And really, it's so much better for our mental health to just kind of deal with it in a way where we're picking little pieces of things to do and feeling good about our day. I did a little bit of this, I did a little bit of that, I did a little bit of this, and when all said and done, was it the most productive day that anyone ever had? No. Am I going to beat myself up about it? No. But I did get some little things done, or some progress towards this and that, and I can feel good about that, and I can carry momentum into tomorrow about that. So anyways, that's all. I hope that made sense to you guys. I just wanted to give you a couple little nuggets for the end of this week and for your weekend. So I hope you guys are using those positive words that we talked about on Monday. And I got some good feedback from parents about some of you guys like kind of taking that to heart and really wanting to apply it. And I was super stoked on that. I hope you guys really do, and that you put some of these things to practice, because all your coaches will all tell you that we wish that we would have started doing a lot of this and learned a lot of this earlier as well. So do your best to glean it. All right. Okay.
So I'm gonna add one thing real quick too. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes.
Is Kristen talking?
She was for a second.
Does she want? But
No, she wants them to do handstand holds. I don't know.
Okay. So I was just gonna say that number one, I agree, and number two, I tell my teams a lot. Confidence comes from being prepared or feeling prepared, and to me, like mental preparation is a huge part of it. But also just those like little nuggets that you can get in all the time. That gives you that confidence because you're preparing yourself mentally, and sometimes it is just like 5 minutes of bumping the ball up to yourself or setting the ball to yourself for 5 minutes, but they really build up over time. And when you do them yourself, you feel prepared, and then you feel more confident, and then you play more confident. So it's just this snowball effect, and it's really, it matters even just to do little things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. Okay, thanks guys. I'll let you go and
you.
have a great weekend. And hopefully we'll get some good news beginning next week. We can get back to volleyball soon. Okay, bye guys.
Bye.